The team over at flashcarda.com sent me a demo unit of the Easy Flash Omega for the Game Boy Advance. In this video, we're going to take a look at it. This is Steve from Restalgia, and let's get started. So as I mentioned, the team over at flashcarda.com had sent me a demo unit of the Easy Flash Omega, and this is essentially a multi-flash card that can be used on the Game Boy Advance. It can also be used on the Nintendo DS as well as the Nintendo DS Lite. This little thing is fantastic, and I just wanted to give them a huge shout out. Thank you very much for sending this over. Flashcarda.com actually does a whole bunch of different types of flashcards. You can get the Game Boy Advance flashcard. They have a ton of other offerings. They've got things for the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo 3DS, the DS, the Game Boy Advance. Definitely something that you guys are going to want to check out. I will leave a link to them in the description down below where you guys can pick one of these up if you're interested, or to just check out some of the other products that they have. So definitely something to do. Check them out. Link, as I said, will be in the description down below. So let's go ahead and take a look inside the box to see what we get. As you guys can see, as I pull it out, it's fairly slim packing in here. There isn't a ton. What we are going to get is the Easy Flash card, as well as an additional attachment. The build itself is really nice. It looks like it was well manufactured. It's the exact same size and ratio as your standard Game Boy Advance games, which is great because when you pop it into your console, it fits in perfectly and it doesn't look out of place. Now, the Easy Flash card runs off of micro SD cards, so you can grab pretty much any micro SD card from as low as 225 megabytes up to, I think it supports 128 gigs, and it just slides right into the side just like that. Now, as I mentioned, it comes with an additional attachment. All you have to do is unscrew this little screw on the back, you take it off, and you re-screw it into this. This part specifically is going to be handy if you are using it on a Nintendo DS Lite. As you can see with the Game Boy Advance, it fits in properly, but with a Nintendo DS Lite, if you pop this in, it'll kind of stick out the bottom. So that is a nice handy feature that they've included, and I absolutely love that it's in there. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to show you guys how to get this thing set up on your computer. So we're going to hop over there now. Alright, so here we are on my computer, and what we're going to do is we're going to get this micro SD card loaded up and ready to go. I do want to mention that I already pre-built this micro SD card, but I'm still going to walk through the steps and show you guys exactly how to get this flash card up and running, because it is a ton of fun. Now, one thing I didn't mention previously, but it can support Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, Game Boy Advance games, which we would all expect, but it can also support NES games. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you guys how to get that all set up. It's really simple. We're going to download some firmware. We're going to download a couple patches, throw them on the micro SD card, throw in some games, and we'll call it a day. So what we need to do is navigate to the website easyflash.cn. So here we are. We've got the website up and running. What we need to do is, actually, we can take a look at the products that they have to offer. And as I mentioned earlier at the other website, they've got a few different options. We are focusing right now on the Easy Flash Omega. That is the version that we have. That is the one that we want to use. So we're going to click over here on downloads. So right over here, Easy Flash Omega, we are looking over at the kernel 1.06 and firmware 7.0. What we need to do is we need to go ahead and download this file. We're going to save it right to our desktop. Then we're going to go to the cheat library. We're going to click on this. We're going to save that also to the desktop. And then they also have a thumbnails pack. Now I do want to mention this thumbnail pack only supports Game Boy Advance. So we are going to get thumbnails on our menu, but it's only going to be for Game Boy Advance. And I'm not 100% sure how to get those thumbnails for any of the other consoles. Like Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and NES, but I am working on that, and if I can figure it out, I'll be more than happy to send you guys an update with that. But again, we're going to save that right to our desktop. These aren't very big files. You're talking about next to nothing for the kernel. The cheat library is only 3 megabytes, and the images are 30 megabytes. But they're actually all done and downloaded onto our desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and pull them over so you guys can see them. we're going to go ahead and extract them here. So this is our kernel. We don't need this, and we don't need that. We just need this file right here. Next, we're going to extract the cheats. So we're going to extract that here as well. And that's going to bring us a folder, which we are going to allow it to fully extract. And while we're doing that, we may as well do the image one as well. So we're going to extract that here. It's going to spit out a folder, and we're going to put that here. We're going to let them both work, and I'm just going to quickly fast forward through this. Perfect. So now we've got our easykernel.bin, we've got our cheat folder, and within that we should have all of the information that we need for our cheats. Sorry, it's spit over on my other screen here. So we've got English and we've got Chinese, and then we've also got a bin file here. So that's perfect. And then if we open up the image folder, that'll populate here, and it will be in alphabetical as well. So you've got A, B, and then all the way through. So this is perfect here. We're going to go ahead and close that off. So now that we've got the files that we need, what we need to do is open up our micro SD card. So I've got mine right over here. It's already plugged in, as you can see here. So as I mentioned, I already have everything already preloaded. Now it's important to note that I'm currently using a 16 gig SD card, and that's only because that's the smallest SD card that I could find. You could honestly get away with a 4 gig micro SD card or an 8 gig at the most. I just only had a 16 gig laying around. There's almost no way that you guys are going to fill up a full 16 gig micro SD card with only Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, or Nintendo games. Now, you can take that as a challenge and feel free to go for it, but definitely 8 gig is more than sufficient. So what we're going to need to do is we just literally grab these files and we just dump them onto the USB. It's going to go ahead and kick those over. Now it's going to calculate and do a whole bunch of stuff. In this case, it's going to ask me if I want to replace the existing files. I'm going to cancel that because I've already transferred them over here. As you can see, my cheat folder is right here. My image folder is right here. And the easykernel.bin is right here. Next, this saver folder, that we don't have to create. It creates automatically whenever you play a game. That folder will create, and then if you save a file, that's where your save files are going to be. Next, what you need to do is create folders for the game consoles. So in this case, I've created a Game Boy folder, I've created a Game Boy Advance folder, I've created a Game Boy Color folder, and I've created the Nintendo folder. And within each of those, all of our games just populate in here. So that's great. I've got all of my Game Boy games, and I'll just quickly show you Game Boy Advance as another example. So I don't know how many I've got in here, almost 400 games. They're all just sitting in there ready to go. But that's pretty much it. Once you transfer those files onto your micro SD card and then you create the folders for your games and load them up, that's pretty much all you have to do. There's nothing left. All you got to do is pop your micro SD card out, throw it into the card reader, load up your Game Boy Advance, and let it run. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop on over, and I'm going to show you guys how to get this kernel update running, because if you just turn it on, it'll run on the old version of the kernel, which is almost guaranteed. Any of the ones that you're going to get will likely have the old version of the kernel, and we're going to want to do a kernel update. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that really quickly on the Game Boy Advance, and then I'm going to walk you guys through the menus and everything and show you guys how everything is all set up. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over now. Alright guys, so here we are. We got to take our micro SD card, pop it into the Easy Flash card, and dump this into the back of the Game Boy Advance. Now we've got to load up that new kernel and get that installed. So we need to press and hold the R button and power it on at the same time. If we've done this correctly, we're going to get the Easy Flash logo screen on, and then it's going to go right into a blue screen just like this. And it's going to progress through from 0% up to 100. We're just going to go ahead and skip through that. Once it's done, it's going to load right into the main menu, and as you can see, we are pretty much done. All the folders that we had created on our micro SD card are going to be visible right on the home screen of the device. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jump into some of the games, and I'm going to show you how they're displayed. It just literally says the name of the ROM. So if you have them labeled a little bit weird, that's how it's going to be displayed here. It doesn't change anything. If we go into Game Boy Advance though, as I mentioned, there are thumbnails. So you're going to see the thumbnails in the bottom right hand corner. Those can actually be turned off if you don't want to see them just by pressing the select button. So that's the toggle to turn on and off the thumbnails for Game Boy Advance. So if we go into the Nintendo folder, you're going to notice actually right beside the name, it actually shows a Famicom controller, which I thought was actually really cool. It does this with all the different consoles. If you toggle with the L and R button, it'll switch between your menus, and inside your main menu, you can change things like your sleep settings, your cheat settings, and your language settings as well. If we go over one more time, we're going to have a little bit of information in terms of what we can do. So the start button will open recently played list, the select button will toggle thumbnails, and the L+A opens up a multi-boot. What multi-boot does is it actually loads the game through the Game Boy Advance BIOS. So if you're going to be playing a game like Pokemon and you need to trade, that's what you're going to need to do, otherwise it won't work. You can also press L plus start and that'll delete a file, which is going to be handy for things like deleting save files or removing games from the console altogether. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to pop one of the games up and I'm going to show you guys how quickly it boots and how the gameplay looks. When you press A on the game, you get a few different options. You've got a clean boot, you've got a boot with add-on, that's going to be if you want to load cheats, and then you've also got a bunch of different options in terms of saving types. You can go and you can filter through, but I highly recommend just staying on the automatic. It'll save it the proper way that the game was intended, and that game's save state will be there the next time you turn on the console. So let's go ahead and get this game started. We've got Castlevania playing up. The gameplay feels absolutely fantastic. When you're playing on the original hardware, there's such a difference between that and playing emulation. And when you're playing with this cart, it 100% feels like you've got the original game in there. Even when you start up the NES games, they still play really well too. There isn't any input lag, the game itself plays really well, and I'm certainly happy with how it actually feels. This is definitely something that I think is well worth the amount of money it costs. The coolest thing that I found is when you're playing certain Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games, it actually pulls the artwork for the frame. If it has a frame built into it like you would see on a Super Game Boy, it will display it right here while you're playing the game. So I noticed that with Legend of Zelda, and then if I switch over to another game like Pokemon, you can see that the frame's also there, which I just think is a really nice touch. All in all, I really like the Easy Flash Omega. This is something that I think is just going to stay in my Game Boy Advance, and I really don't see any reason to take it out. I've got every single game that I could ever want to play on the Game Boy Advance at the tip of my fingers now. And that is all I have for you guys in this video. Thank you so very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, leave a comment in the comment section below, and give the video a thumbs up. Other than that, I'll talk to you guys again later.